everyone. We're live. I just said I had my hot cocoa, my cacao, my coffee, my CBD. I wonder what my genetics are thinking right now, right? Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be a fire hour. And what we want to make sure you know is that this is not the only time we are going to talk about this. Both Amanda and I realize there are both so many questions that you guys have that we want to answer, and we want to make sure that we do that thoroughly and then also have a to be continued. So look for the to be continued. But before we even get to the to be continued, I, Ashley Koff, RD of the Better Nutrition Program, have the tremendous pleasure of bringing you Amanda Archibald, RD of the Genomic Kitchen. And she has done something, well, she's done so many amazing things for us in this world of understanding genomics and DNA testing, et cetera. But one of the things that she's done, and I put the link in in our profile or whatever you call the notification about today. I want you to use that blog because that blog lays out really all the foundational information. It's long, but I have to tell you, there was never a point where I wanted to stop reading. I just kept going through and kept going through. So if you hear me referencing, yes, and that's in the blog post, that is what we are talking about there. And of course, also Amanda has an incredible book, both for you and for your patients. So please consider getting and using that as a tool. And we may also, I have a feeling we'll talk about some of the Better Nutrition assessment tools today in collaboration with this. And so I shared those links as well. So, to kick it off, what I wanted to do was just sort of set the stage for why we're here today. One of the reasons we're here is because I keep emailing, instant messaging Amanda on a consistent basis, because in my role at the Better Nutrition Program, we're getting recruited by a lot of companies that would like to partner with us. Well, they don't really want to partner with us. They want to use our network of practitioners to sell their tools to. And I get really excited about that opportunity if they were going to be selling the tools as other tools that could work in conjunction with what a practitioner is doing so that we could create better outcomes. But when I send it to her and I'm like, what do you think about this company? Or can you believe this company said this? What I'm starting to realize is a lot of those companies are circumventing the practitioner and going direct to consumer and saying, hey, give us a swab of your DNA and we'll give you what supplements you should take, or we'll give you what food you should eat, or we'll sell you all, a river in China or whatever. And that's not going to be better. So because of that, I thought if I, as a practitioner, am curious and really wanting to tap her expertise for that, I had a feeling a lot of you would be as well. So we're going to start off, we're going to go through sort of three areas today. One, what should a practitioner consider when thinking about genetic testing on that part? And a lot of that's going to have to do with who you, the practitioner, are today. The second part we're going to talk about is there are a lot of tests out there, and we want to talk a little bit about how a practitioner could actually use those tests, where it's warranted, how it's effective, what to ask, some of those things. And then the third thing we're going to take a look at is really what to do Monday, right? What do you, when you wake up on Monday, or if you're creating your list for next week, what should you, the practitioner, be doing? So, Amanda, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. I'm back.
Love having you. I learn so much every time. And just a reminder to our audience, please feel free to drop in a comment. Because I'm on a system called Ecamm, I may not see your name. So if you want to say who you are or where you're joining from, that's great. But if you have any questions, this is live and we are happy to answer those questions. So Amanda, I think, one of the questions that's happening for practitioners today is they're either getting their patients coming in saying, I did this test, I did the 23andMe, and other than finding out that I have a brother or my dad's from, this place, I'm also wondering about, what I should eat. But how do we as a practitioner choose, what should we be considering in terms of choosing to get involved in genetic testing and DNA testing and assessment on that part?
So from a clinical perspective,
yes,
what are the considerations? Because, you and I have talked quite a little bit over the past year about where it's almost like there's a little bit of a pressure, if you will, to at least take a look at exactly what you're saying. There's all kinds of DNA kits that may be on end caps, in stores. I don't know if it's like the air fryer might be the holiday gift this year, but last year definitely DNA was up there, right? So you do have the pressure that consumers are asking these questions. They're not necessarily saying, hey, do you do DNA testing? Although that is happening for me. So there's a lot of pressure to consider this field. And those of you who know me, I'm unabashed in saying this is what we as clinicians and nutrition experts have actually the training to do. Do we need more training? Yes. But in terms of the considerations for is this for you, the first thing you want to think about is your level of interest, first of all. Secondly, there is a good learning curve. Are you ready for that? But thirdly, and I think it's an important decision, it's like bifurcated, in my opinion, in that there's clinically relevant DNA testing, and there's also more health and wellness focused testing. And I think both are worth looking at because I have looked in both spaces and involved in both spaces. So if you're going to look more at, hey, I just want to add something into my practice where I don't need to do all this advanced level training, it just expands my reach a little bit, then this more health and wellness sort of user-friendly, ready-to-go product is where you want to head, or it's a really good starting space because it doesn't require you to really have a deep investment in this higher level nutrigenomic training. So it's actually a very good starting space. Or the other way is, hey, I'm ready. So, okay, jump in there.
No, I was going to say, one of the things that I consider whenever I'm thinking about, am I going to do something new, is really what's the ROI? And the ROI is like, as you're saying, like there's all this knowledge that we can get. So better outcomes is like a pretty big ROI in terms of that. But if we are looking at the ability, like so if we're thinking from a business standpoint, and I'm a private practitioner, where do you think that you could fit as a dietitian who goes through the training? Like, so those that have used your courses and are going, deciding to invest, because it's a lot of investment, going deep in terms of learning about this. What do you see how they can work with, what could they be doing that, say, a practitioner who isn't trained in that could be doing?
So to get started, or in terms of,
I would actually say once they're through it. So I'm not asking the question well. Let me rephrase it. So if I say, hey, today I'm not well trained in this, but I'm deciding I want to go all in. I'm going on to Amanda's site. I'm taking her courses. At the outside of it, at the conclusion of it, not at the outside, at the conclusion of investing in training, what do you see then that somebody is able to do, whether it's how much they charge for their services, what kinds of patients, who they could see, those kinds of things?
So it's a good question, and I do want to back up to courses, because I think there's different ways you can expand your knowledge slowly so you know the field's right for you. The bottom line is that those who invest in the training of nutrigenomics or understanding genomic science and how it applies in clinical practice, you are so far ahead of the field because the customer is already asking about it. They're already curious. Their challenge is they can't find people who can actually interpret this information, whether it's 23andMe or, it's an advanced level test. The rate limiting step is us actually being trained. So you become a member of a group of clinicians around the world who are trained to do this. You're ahead of the curve. And I'm already seeing in my work that I consult with physicians. Physicians are pretty busy, no matter how good they are, and they don't have time to learn this. So I actually consult during interpretation work. So not only are you investing in yourself and you become ahead of the curve so that you're going to meet the market as it swells, but you also offer a unique skill set to other medical practices who may never have the time to do DNA interpretation. Yet their customers are asking for it. I mean, I remember IFM in the international conference in 2015. There were a couple of physicians there saying, look, this is how you work with DNA data. This is how you work with 23andMe. So that was back then. We've come so far. And this is how you optimize this in your practice, how you use it. This is how you charge for it. So you put yourself in a space that's not only is the you're not in an elite space. I would never say that. But you're among a much smaller handful of highly qualified clinicians. You're going to be able to charge for it, there's no doubt. But you're also able to lend your expertise to other practitioners, clinicians, and medical practices who may want to do it, but they don't have time to do it, but they know the value of it.
And I'm very comfortable using the word elite. So it is an elite and it's an elevated space because, and I wanted to, I wanted to start there because I do think it's important to understand that what we are going to talk about today are a lot of different ways that you can do some, if not all of this, and also what you should be, how you should position yourself as the practitioner, et cetera. But that, I totally agree with you. I think, if I was just starting my practice out, or if I was deciding to say I'm going all in on a private practice, this would be the space that I am working in. And likewise, if I was thinking of joining, an entity where I wanted to be able to offer this as well. So I think that's super smart. So let's go back to courses. So let's say that I, Ashley, have no training in genomic testing at all. I've heard Amanda a couple of times. I'm super curious. What do I do?
Yeah, and so this is why about 2-3 years ago when I was working with Dr. Bobby Klein, we actually put together a webinar. It's somewhere on my website. We can post it afterwards.
Great.
Which is, it's 1 hour of, this is what this opportunity looks like. This is what genes are. This is what they do. Here's the difference they make, right? And this is the culinary translation side. So it's soup to nuts, 1 hour. So you look at that and you say, oh, I'm curious. Now what's next? I don't think I've got the time or the money or the energy right now because I've got like 3 kids or whatever. This isn't my time to learn nutrigenomics, but I want to take advantage of what we know about the science, where I am right now. I want to change my conversation. I want to, like, as I say, I want to bring in some of the nuggets into my practice that are seated or rooted in nutrigenomic science. That's what I'm doing at the Genomic Kitchen, not on the clinical side. That's we'll get to that. That's where the training comes in. So what I decided to do is create courses that allow clinicians to go that next step to say, okay, this is really interesting. Tell me more. Tell me more. I want to know more, but I'm not going to invest like the next year in nutrigenomic training. So that's what I do. So I give you the insights, but I give you here's how you use this in practice without a DNA test and without your advanced training. Does it work better if you have some functional nutrition background? Yeah, maybe. But I'm going to take you through how we think through the biochemistry, but in a very practical, actionable way. So that's the next step I would take. If you're locked and loaded, then you go to the next level. But I deliberately stepped into the gateway space.
And who is the locked and loaded? If I'm listening right now and I'm like, I'm all in and I want to go to the NASA equivalent of going to the moon with genomics, where would you recommend people get that kind of training?
So that's where, if you're ready, you say, this is for me. I've read enough, I'm ready. Then you do not need to go back to university to get a degree in nutrigenomics. If that's where you're at, then do it. You're going to be more sort of on the academic side, and that's fantastic. Most of us have been out in the field long enough. It's like, okay, I'm not going to do yet one more degree. So then you're going to go into very specific courses that are actually run by testing companies. That's what I would recommend. And get ready to invest time to do it. Because they're going to take you through what you need to know from a biochemistry side that fits in what you're going to see in the gene side. And that's what you need to know. And guess what? Once you've gone through that, you're still going to need to give yourself some breathing space, because you never come out of those courses and, right, I'm ready to interpret a test. It takes mentoring. It takes being able to talk back and forth with clinicians. It really takes someone that you can talk to say, am I interpreting this right? Because, we can talk a little bit more about this later, because genomic information, you can go through a course that's focused on genomics. I'm calling it nutrigenomics, but really what you're learning is genomics. So about genes, and then you're learning about nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics. So you'll learn about both those. It all fits together. And yes, there'll be some epigenetics as well, which, we may get to later. But but where was I heading with
well,
that?
I'm going to ask two things real quickly on that part. One, and I just want to say first point blank, this is not sponsored by any company at all, and there's no financial investment, et cetera. Are there any companies that you think are worth, can you list three that somebody might want to, if they're thinking about going that full stop, I want to learn from these companies, the ones that you think are more.
Yeah. And that's really important because we got asked that the most. And I know I know all three of them. So the top of my head right now is Bioceuticals. So some of you may know Bioceuticals. It's a supplement company. They don't have deep traction here in the U.S. They're Australian, and they have much more traction in that part of the world than the Asias. However, they have put together, they took the leap and they created something called DNA in Practice. Which you can find. So you just Google we can post a link, right?
Yeah.
The reason I love them is I know their clinical team, the molecular geneticist who put the course together, at least is teaching the course, is second to none. Right. Not only is she a clinician, but she's a very well-published researcher. As I was talking with a colleague yesterday, they said, my gosh, they're lucky to have her. Beautifully presented, entry level. You will go soup to nuts. And I'm not quite sure what the pricing is right now, but it's under 1,000 Australian dollars, which means it's even cheaper for us. That is an absolute go-to course. And even though you will see in terms of the case studies, a little bit of how they're looking at their tests, which is beautiful, by the way, you can walk away from that with a very solid foundation of what you need to know. Great. Now, I also sit in their Facebook group, which is excellent. And you definitely see that, yes, you can graduate and pass all the tests, but then people are like, okay, now what? Yeah. That's where the mentoring comes in. That's what's so important. So I absolutely love them. I have firsthand knowledge of them. Their course, beautifully produced. The other course that is available right now, and they're coming to US, is, and I just actually jumped in the course, but I know the presenters have known them for years, is 3x4 Genetics. It's 3x4 Genetics. They're out of South Africa. They are coming next year to the U.S. I can tell you, knowing both of the presenters, this is world-class stuff. The price point is going to be about the same as Bioceuticals. So definitely you can take a look at that. As their head of education said yesterday, it's more nutrigenetic focused, but it doesn't matter. You still need to learn the genes and the biochemistry. Yeah. And the third place, and this is really a Cadillac course, is it used to be called Genoma, now it's Genomic Medicine Works. Some of the people listening may be familiar with the company because I didn't work with Genomic Medicine Works, but I definitely have worked in partnership, if you will, with Bobby and Joe, who head up the company. This is a big investment. This is, if you are not a geek, if you really want to invest some time. So this is deep service. This is almost like the PhD. Great. It's very, 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 very good. It's very intensive. I think it's about an 11-month course. There's a difference in pricing, but you'll have to contact them because I think there may be like a membership program or whatever. So those are my three that are really, really sound courses that I'm familiar with. And of course, I've looked at a lot of others. And those of us who talk back and forth in the community seem to land there, on these three programs right now. And then there could be others that some of you know about. There are some that are free, right? And they'll give you the basics, but if they're free, usually you cannot interact with the course instructor. So you're out there on your own, and you need to be able to talk to your instructors or to be mentored. Yeah. Be able to talk to those of us who've been in the community who can say, yeah, this is a pattern you're looking at, or they just want to ask simple questions but not feel stupid. That's important.
Yeah, I'm having so many memories back to about 18 years ago, sitting in a Jeff Bland seminar where everyone was complaining he went way too fast and all this other. And I'm like, no, keep going. Like, I'm so, I love your pace. And, at that time he was describing the foundation for really the 5R and like, how do you, work with a digestive system and all of that piece. And, where we are today with things like the GI map test. And I just did an interview with some practitioners who are using that test. And, they'll say that still today one of the geniuses of the GI map test is that great Bible that they put together that comes with the test that helps you start to see. And I think because today we don't really have that kind of Bible for genomic testing as I understand it, what you're talking about is your practitioners are the Bible that are going to then, someday those case studies will all be accumulated in a place for you to reference. But that makes a ton of sense. I wanted you just used the word epigenetics, and I think it's really important that as we go through this, if you're wondering about things like genetics versus genomics or any of these other things, read Amanda's blog. We're not going to spend time there. But epigenetics is really interesting because we're going to go into the part of the conversation now where we talk about the testing that's out there that is, everything from a 23andMe on forward. And some of them are talking about, well, we use epigenetic information. We talk about the epigenetics. And so I just want to make sure we define epigenetics. And then Amanda's shaking her head because she's like, no. Yeah, but we'll get to that. Yeah, so define it.
Yes, that confuses me because when we're looking at a biochemical level, we're looking at the influence of the environment on gene expression. So, for example, toxins, for example, or hypo or hypermethylation can actually turn genes on or turn them off. So I'm always a little confused, and maybe it's really not my expertise to talk about that so much, but it confuses me. I've said, we do epigenetic testing. Oh, you do? Okay, so maybe somebody listening in can actually refine that or define that. But, I'm looking at more at a molecular level, and I do talk a little bit about it in my book, just a little bit, in terms of the methylation cycle. But there's lots of different ways you can turn genes on and off. And I think maybe that's where it gets a little fuzzy with epigenetic testing. I'm not versed enough to really understand what they're doing.
Well, as someone, and again, as I mentioned, I'm always instant messaging Amanda, and as someone who has asked a lot of those companies the same thing, they don't have a better response than this. I think that's a word that we like to hear tossed around. So,
maybe, but there is. So when you get down into sort of the cell biology or the molecular level, you definitely know we can use bioactives, but also contaminants can change gene expression. And that's where coming in more from a functional level and understanding what the R of removing is so important, so that we don't turn off tumor suppressant genes, and we do, et cetera, et cetera. We have the right genes turned on and the wrong genes turned off. So we learn that, but within the context of the cell.
Right.
So. Yeah.
And I think that goes to the other part. You do such a good job of this in your blog of talking about how you can't just look at genomics and not look at, what's the health of someone's digestion. Or we had a very lively discussion around caffeine that you brought up in your Facebook group. So I'd love to move into that part, which is actually what are the limitations? Because we're going to get to the test in a moment, but what can looking at genomic testing do, but what can't it do? I think is really important, because in the what it can't do is where the practitioner lives in what we've been talking about. Yeah.
So the promise of genetic, or I call it genomic testing, is that to me it removes a lot of the guesswork. So this is we're talking about the promise, what it can do. To be honest with you, and I think one time we'll come back and I think we've been asked to do a live where I can show people literally how I work and how I think, and this also will change which company you choose as well. Again, we may have to come back to that, but I can, to coin a term from one of my mentors, basically unzip somebody's DNA, or I can read a genomic report and organize the patterns I see to start to tell the story of somebody's life. And I'm talking about from a health perspective, because what we're doing is we're looking under the cover at how their biochemistry might be working. So what it does, and I do this uniquely in my practice, is I don't do an intake form, or if I do, I look at it after I've looked at the DNA, because the DNA actually tells me which questions to ask. Right? So instead of coming in saying, okay, well, somebody presents with this syndrome or this issue or that issue, by knowing that, I can look purely with no bias at all and then connect it to the symptoms versus saying, okay, somebody has a diagnosis, therefore I'm going to find this. So it's not like it's a leap of faith. It's a very different way of thinking about, let the biochemistry, let the genes talk to you about what you need to think about in the biochemistry. That drives the conversation you have with your client, because then their symptoms will come through. anxiety, insomnia, or GI issues or whatever. And you get that validation from the DNA. So it can give you the greatest signposts in your toolbox as to where to look and what questions to ask. And from there, which tests to order or suggest be ordered. So the promise is it takes away a lot of the confusion, a lot of like, oh my gosh, I can't figure out what's wrong. I mean, we see that all the time in our list of, okay, this patient presents with this lab results and these issues, and I can't figure out what to do next. Well, DNA kind of takes that all out. It says, well, this may be the greatest indicator of where to look to explain what you're finding and why you can't find resolution. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. What it can't do is give you a diagnosis, because that's not what it's supposed to do, and that's not our job either. It's not about giving someone a diagnosis, so that is not the promise. It doesn't promise it's going to solve all your health issues, but what it does do is remove an awful lot of the guesswork and a lot of, working with physicians. It removes a lot of that patient coming in and out and in and out and out, because we're doing test after test after test. We're like, well, we don't know where to look next. Your genes don't lie, so it tells you exactly what the inefficiencies in the biochemistry might be. So you investigate that versus guessing and ordering expensive tests and then saying, well, okay, it might be this, or maybe I work with the mitochondria first, or I'm going to go to the gut first. Well, yeah, maybe you need to look at something else first, because your genes don't lie. And as I think I said on a list up the other day, disease or diagnosis is the body's cry for help. Mm-hmm. DNA information tells you where to look to start to help. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Amazing. Yeah, I know. It's just phenomenal work.
She's like, I know, I love it. And it is elite and it is elevated. Okay, so one of the reasons we ask this are because, and I'll just give like 3 examples that I've seen. There are a million, I'm sure, that are out there. I have that MTHFR, so I'm taking a methylfolate supplement. We did a whole, by the way, an entire webinar or an entire live discussion. It's over on my YouTube at the Better Nutrition Program with Amanda, specifically on that, going through. It's very sciencey. And Renee, I'm going to say it again right now. I have, Renee, so I have that MTHFR. I should take a methylfolate supplement. Another one is I am a fast or a slow metabolizer of caffeine. So I should either not have or I should have caffeine. Another one that came up, it just went out of my brain. I had 3 examples. So let's just go with those 2. I had 3
transferase.
There you go. Yeah, right. Exactly. And or with fats, I don't digest fats well. And so as a result, I don't digest carbohydrates well. So as a result, I should be on a keto diet. So what we're seeing there are these very poor causalities but unfortunately, and this is why I want to move into the space of testing, this is what a lot of the testing companies are doing out there right now, which is recommending, they're either teaching practitioners to recommend a supplement based on particular outcomes of a test, or they're suggesting they're actually removing the practitioner and just advising a patient to do that. So we all know that that is not the right answer. And Amanda, I want us to start off with really, as we have this conversation about tests, let's go through I'm trying to think of the best way to think about it. We all agree that just prescribing a supplement as a result of a DNA test is not good, but let's go through why in that MTHFR example, that's not a win and what could be better.
There's a lot of questions to answer. So let me go back to a lot of the testing companies. Mm-hmm. They're producing reports, and you have this SNP for let's suggestively sell this supplement. It's just because I was just on a live call to try and work around that earlier on. So
that's right.
There are some companies that are technology companies who are in the DNA business. Mm-hmm. And part of their business model, it's amazing technology. Part of their business model is not in selling the tests; it's in selling the affiliates or the products that go with the tests. Mm-hmm. Those are companies you want to run a million miles from. And you've been approached by them, mm-hmm. and I have, and I'm like, absolutely not, because all they want is access to you as clinicians, so that you can order their tests and they can sell their supplements. And there's no doubt about it. I think they will go away. They just will. They're sort of coming to their heyday. Other clinically relevant testing companies are also presenting their information. It's kind of snip by snip. And you need training to be able to interpret their reports. So the reports are normally the B2B, they sold directly to you as a clinician, but they're actionable enough that your patient might be able to read them, but they need you. There are some very good companies and they kind of do organize a little bit. So MaxGen Labs, those that many of you know, I work with their product. I like it because I can see the patterns in their reports, but that would not be a starter report. You need training, okay, to do that. So one of the challenges is when you see some companies out there, they're presenting their reports and they're not necessarily putting them in a systems or pathway place, is you need to understand how they work. So 3x4 Genetics that is coming, 3 times 4, I don't know if it's 3x4 or 3 times 4 Genetics that's coming to US, has taken that leap to organize things in pathways. You still need a lot of training. It's great. You know, I was actually chatting with them yesterday. I'm like, oh my gosh, I really like this report because it's actionable for the clinician in that it's organized. Like you say, it's not organized by methylation, but it's organized in a way that's logical biochemically, that you will never say, oh, you've got MTHFR. It will teach you to think about the many variants that are involved in folate metabolism, which is really what we're getting here. I mean, you could have an MTHFR be heterozygous, and it makes not a hill of beans difference, but your folate receptor or your ability to get vitamin B12 into your cells is a much bigger issue. So MTHFR is it's just one data point on the horizon, I would say.
I think the analogy for me there would be like, it would be like adding a probiotic without realizing that you have leaky gut and you have to repair the gut lining. Like, it just is like, we're not, we would be making a recommendation without, going through on that part.
Absolutely. You're just throwing a bunch of stuff at the person. And that's what I like about DNA testing. Even in functional testing, sometimes the temptation is to, try and use supplements or whatever to try and ease the flow, but we're not necessarily looking upstream or downstream enough to think, hey, something needs to be fixed over in this corner at the body, gut or not. Or it may be a methylation cycle or something with a transsulfuration cycle, which we fix, if we will, we adjust through food and supplements if there's not depending on the client. So we never, ever, ever look at this one SNP mentality. Is very detrimental to the consumer and is detrimental to us clinically. That's not how we think.
So I think that's a really important point that I want to highlight and talk a little bit about how a practitioner, again, our goal here is to celebrate you, the practitioner, and have you feel empowered, and also to really present yourself as a competitive advantage for the patient, and also, as you mentioned before, for doctors, to collaborate with you. So what we're just a flat agreement is, if said test says we will take a swab of your DNA and we are going to sell a supplement, as a practitioner, really great idea to move away from that one. And what we're talking about here from a competitive advantage standpoint is to say to your patient, or to publicly say, as I will say often in our social media, if a test tells you that they're going to swab your DNA and then sell you a supplement, run the other way. Instead, we can have your DNA swabbed, and then either myself, a qualified practitioner, or I am going to collaborate with qualified practitioners, and we are going to learn from that. And then we're going to figure out what your total nutrition solution would be, which may include a supplement. It may include a specific type of a supplement, but gosh darn it, it might also include just changing your meal and what you're having from a food standpoint, or how you're cooking it, or, and that's going to be your job to look at all of that, which includes, remember, what somebody's medication is. So I think what, to me, the difference there, the competitive advantage for you, the practitioner, lies in communicating that you are the quarterback for their total nutrition recommendation.
Exactly.
Of course, that naturally comes out of, my interest in having you also assess where their total nutrition is, and then figuring out how we improve it based on that information. So in that scenario, I just want to bring that back to you. So in that scenario, Amanda, if I, Ashley, which I am not qualified to read these tests, but I want my client to do it, or my client is doing one of those tests, and it's a good test, to your point. So I think we were talking before that there are two avenues. One, there are some companies that you feel we could rely on their experts to help us as a practitioner understand what the results mean. And then also you have a group of practitioners, or we can identify a trained practitioner to collaborate with. Would that be a correct how you would put in that flow?
I'm not.
Let me go through it this way. Yeah. So I may have put too much into that part. So if I, Ashley, am working with Jane, a client, and Jane would like to have her, she's done her DNA testing. Let's say she's done the raw 23andMe. We'll just use that as an example. And the good news is she didn't go to one of those companies that just did a swab and said, here's your food prescription, or here's your supplement prescription. So now she's coming to me and she's saying, hey, I've got these results, and I'm saying, hey, I'd love to use these results, but I'm not qualified to assess them. So I think my options are either there are some test companies that they have experts that I actually, no, there aren't, or there are, I don't know. Okay.
I mean, each test company is going to assess their own results.
Okay.
If you're trained in, obviously, because they have that vested interest, and that's what they're, but if you are trained in genomics,
right,
and you're trained by good companies or through good courses, you are, for the most part, able to read test results from most companies.
So in this instance, I'm saying if I actually am not trained in it, can I trust let's say that 23, that she got the 23andMe results, and it was, and then she went over to a company that does that interpretation. Are there experts that I could turn to? So as a practitioner, what are my tools in that situation?
In other words, if you're not trained in nutrigenomics or genomics,
right,
you have a client who comes in with test results, you will need to refer that individual on to a clinician who is trained.
Okay.
That's what you would need to do, so that we could then help read it for you, create a storyboard, and then the client comes back to you, or the client information. So basically, you're going to consult as a practitioner, out to a practitioner like myself. We'll put it together. This is what I do for physicians, and then we put that storyboard together. We push that back to you.
Great.
And then, with the report, and then you continue on with the client.
So there's no company that's doing that right now. It would be consulting. So like you consult with physicians, do you know dietitians who would consult with other dietitians? So if I wanted to,
probably just me. There may be some. There are some of us out there, but they have very busy practices. But what I've done with my practice is I keep the number of clients I see at a relatively low volume because of this work, because I'm teaching, 3 different audiences,
right,
as well. And this consulting space is really important, and so is the mentoring space. So you'll see us open that up next year.
Great.
It's just really important.
And that, by the way, is another reason to get involved in being the person to. So if you, by the way, Jane, who's out there, not my patient Jane, so I'll use another name, Julie. If Julie, the dietitian, learns about and goes and studies this, then all of us who are not studying it want to come to you, and we can consult to you. So you can actually be B2B, RD to RD, and we would love to have that happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be very good space to be in, because again, you may have an excellent functional nutrition, functional medicine practice, doing a lot of volume, but with that kind of individual, being able to add DNA into the mix, it's just a business decision.
Yes.
Can you take the time? Most physicians can't, a lot of clinicians can't right now, but add it in and then just consult that piece into your practice. So yes, so it enables you to offer the product.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But there's one company I wanted to come back to.
Yes.
We started out in the health and wellness space that I actually really like too. And that's AGS, so Advanced Genomic Solutions. Mm-hmm. They have a very good basic product, health and wellness package that you immediately can start working with as a clinician. It's nicely researched. They're very careful. I've talked to their lab directors. I know their team on the ground here in the U.S. You can get started right away with them, and I like them. It's simple, simple stuff. You can add a micronutrient test, bundle it with, your practice tools, Ashley, it's a very nice product, gateway product.
Great. So that was AGS. So Kim is helping us get straight to the point. Thank you for putting a very clear question, Kim. And that I say on my part, because I'm creating these scenarios that I want answers to. But Kim is saying, which companies are recommended to refer patients for DNA tests? So if you want to refer them out, what company would you refer them for those DNA tests?
So, meaning that the patient would be in the care of that company where they would have practitioners that would do the interpretation.
Well, so my understanding is that doesn't exist. Is that correct?
Maybe somebody listening in would be able to, but that's the case right now, like you identified, that you can't really outsource the patient to a company. Right. You will outsource the patient to a clinician like myself, which is what we're suggesting you do. We'll do the interpretation part, and then they come back to you. Yeah. Or if you want, you can send them all to me and we'll do it all for you.
That's right.
You lose business. So, what I've done, to give you an example, I do I tag team with some other dietitians. We have a small network, a very good dietitians. Most of them are trained in nutrigenomics. But sometimes I will bring in a client, and the complexities, the amount of hand holding that's needed because of the complexities is beyond what I'm able to do. So that patient is immediately referred into my network to do that heavy duty stuff. So my expertise is always on the front end.
Yeah.
But if you're dealing with somebody who needs hand holding for 3 or 6 months because of complex issues, then you're doing the reverse. So does that make sense, Kim? So I don't know that you can just say, here, go to Nutrigenome and, show up on their digital doorstep and somebody on their staff will interpret their DNA. And I don't know that exists.
And then let me clarify, because I took the question a different way, and I think you've answered it as well. No, I think this is really great. I think I think it's where our genetics are taking it in differently, right? But I think Kim, I think what she was saying is, if you are nascent, if you have a small amount of education and are in that new space but want to get involved, AGS, which is an American Genomic Solution, Advanced Genomics Solutions.
Very simple, yeah.
So a very simple, a basic test. Now, if you have and in terms of, would any test be okay for raw data is what she wants to know. So if you are trying to get the raw data, what test? Yeah.
Well, what I do there, so there's 2 options right now that I would recommend. So for the basic, health and wellness, it really is simple, okay? But it's useful. It's actionable for us. You can do a 23andMe upload with them. Mm-hmm. So you can do the buccal swab or the 23andMe upload, and they have a nice, wholesale site for us as clinicians. It's actionable. You're not going to be solving great issues, and that's not the goal of the test. Okay, that's why I like them. They're a great corporate wellness fit. That's where they're headed, and bingo. Mm-hmm. Finally, we can take corporate wellness away from weighing people, blood pressure, and cholesterol. This takes it to another level. Nutrition Genome, if you have 23andMe data prior to 2017, that's a good upload. Mm-hmm. It's a clinically relevant test. I don't like the way that it's been outputted now. I mean, your patients read it yet, but it still needs you. But that's a good actionable report. So I do have a medical practice that uses that, and I interpret that for them. And with excellent outcomes.
Right.
So those are 2 I know. I don't know anybody else that could be out there. Okay. And I just am not aware of them right now. So
I recall at one point I took my 23andMe data and sent it over to Found My Fitness from Rhonda Patrick.
Oh, Rhonda, yeah.
Yeah. Do you I felt like I liked what I got back. Again, it's very, for me, as an individual, I felt like what she was doing was a great job, and she was definitely within the parameters of saying hey, this is just some information I'm sharing with you on that.
Pretty much, yeah. Rhonda, so Found My Fitness is great, and she keeps updating the SNP. She also, I don't know, those of you who don't know Rhonda Fitzpatrick is amazing. She has a premium membership. I just paid for it. It's
she just launched it. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think you get your DNA, whatever, it's updated for free there, right? We all pushed our DNA through there. Well, not all of us. But it's such a great scientific community.
Yeah.
However, her report is a nice to know report, right? It's not one that I would then turn around and try to make actionable as a clinician, you'd have to do a lot of work. And again, you get very fluent at this, what you're able to look through and say, yeah, this, snip. But it's not laid out right in terms of telling a story for someone. There are other companies do a better job. And that's not her intent.
No, I think it's very well within that range if you want to read something and that part.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to Renee's question when she says, so if her client says to her, who should I get my DNA done by? What do I say? Refer to Amanda or what?
What do I say? So the client's coming to you and saying, I want to do a DNA test and have you interpret it. So, well, unless you're trained to do it, you can't do it, right? That's the bottom line. But you can build out a bundle, and this is what I'm suggesting to you while you're learning, that allows you to offer the DNA product. The client doesn't know this, so then I would actually, but there are probably some other clinicians that can do this. To if you stick with the companies we're recommending, we can do the interpretation for you, create the storyboard. We create an internal report. This is what I do for physicians. That says, these are my recommendations based on the DNA. This is where you want to go with this. Because all the DNA is doing is giving you a way to think and an output. What you need as a clinician is, okay, somebody's giving me the output, it's actionable, right? So the patient doesn't actually need to know that you didn't have the expertise to interpret the DNA. What they need to know is what's the DNA mean. So you get that. You get that from me. And by the way, this isn't about me promoting myself, but I realize
it's not, but it's impossible. So I know this going in. I know it's not. And I also know that's not your nature and also your capability in terms of if everybody here started sending you all your patients. That is the reason that we started off the conversation the way that we did. There is so much opportunity. And if you do decide to dive in deep like Amanda has done and get all this training and do this, you can just see immediately the ripple effect of what this is going to be like for your business. For those of us that aren't doing that part, I think what we're clear about here is there is still a profound role for us. And we also have people like Amanda that we can collaborate with. But remember, and you and I were just talking about this when we popped on, which is, if you have somebody who has thyroid stuff going on or they have GI stuff going on, yes, you're going to do the DNA testing, but you still have to do like the GI map or you still have to do the other pieces. And Renee's just saying, we just need to know where to go. And so I think, Renee, one piece I would say coming out of this part is, I think it is very appropriate for you to connect with Amanda, and I'd connect with her offline here just to find out what that referral piece could be. Yeah,
and I can share with you some storyboards what that looks like so you can see it's a very clear report where I am talking to you as a clinician saying, this is my recommendation, what you need to do. These are the tests. This is why. So you're not like, you can actually speak seamlessly about the DNA. So because the client's not going to understand the storyboard at all. What they want to know is what it means.
What does it mean? Right. And I want to get there. Yes.
Does that make sense, Renee?
Yes.
So
and Kim put it very clearly here. Get the raw data, have it interpreted by a trained clinician.
Yeah.
And I think that's
you learn. But if you don't want to learn, you can still benefit from the field. Because that's a B2B between someone like myself and you. So you can still offer the business. If you see the business is there, don't wait. Let us help you. Because if you've got the demand, don't shut the door. Because somebody else will go through that door. They're already getting trained.
And for example, like what I would do as I find myself a very intelligent business person. As a business person, what I would do is I would put together a course. And what I would do with that course is I would offer a course for someone. And at the start of that course, everybody's going to have maybe it's 15 people. They're all going to have their DNA test. I would have talked to Amanda ahead of time, found out how much time she needs to create those roadmaps and go over it with me. And then when I kick off the course, then I can take everyone through how to, we're going to do assessments of your magnesium, your omega intake, all of these things that I'm going to now take you through my course, which is how to tune up your digestion or how to do whatever, but you will be offering that component. So think about it from a business standpoint where what we wanted to do today is make sure that we understand the limitations of the testing, the limitations of a practitioner who is not yet trained in this, the opportunity to get that training. And that leads us to this sort of concluding area, because I will keep us at an hour, which is what we promised everybody, which is, so what do you do on Monday, right? So today is Thursday. Tomorrow you probably have your plans. Maybe over the weekend you're going to check out, and thank you, Renee, for sharing ags-health.com. And we'll get in here with some of the other links. I'll have Amanda populate them with some of the other links that she mentioned. But Amanda, what do you suggest on Monday?
So what I suggest is, you sit back and decide, is this an area that you want to go into as a clinician? Okay, and just make that decision. I either believe this is the future or I don't. And so that's your first step. Secondly, you want to look at what your business model is. Are my clients or is my business going to be more community focused, corporate focused, or health and wellness focused? That you can go more on the AGS side. It doesn't stop you from going to training, but it actually allows you to immediately start to take advantage, I think, of the field, but go with a relevant company and a relevant task. It's beautifully produced. You're good to go. I could talk more about that another time. But if you say, no, I'm not interested, I want to be in private practice, then you have to decide, I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to go and investigate which training I want to go through. And you're going to know that it's, even us, those of you who are really fast learners, you could go through a 3-month course, but give yourself 6 months, because then you're going to sit back and you're going to absorb it and digest it. And, one of the things I'm going to be doing with one of my colleagues next year is actually offering that mentoring program where we actually take you through case study after case study after case study. So that even if you train in nutrigenomics, you've just graduated, right? You're like, okay, now, I'm still not ready to see a client, but I can learn, just like many have in functional medicine training, functional nutrition training. So your decision point is, are you serious? Is this for you? Do you believe in this? And then private practice versus more community, corporate. That's what I would do. And I think several of the people listening know my work, and if you're not even want to make that decision, but you want to take advantage of what the field has to offer, then what we're doing at the Genomic Kitchen, that it offers that kind of gateway to take a look without making a commitment.
Yeah. And let's just talk for a second a little bit about cost on that part. So when we're evaluating what this is going to cost, so if I actually have a patient that comes in and they may need other tests or other things, I'm assuming that the getting the raw data and coming to you is not covered by their insurance at this point. We'll just make that assumption. Okay. No. So what am I looking at? And you don't have to disclose your specific fees, but if we could ballpark from getting the raw test through to getting the roadmap with some support for interpretation, what's that dollar value look like?
So it really depends on the company, because AGS is going to have a different price structure, but I think most clinicians can run with AGS. But for clinically relevant tests, you're looking at a baseline of about $300. I think that's wholesale. Yeah, let's call it $300 wholesale.
Okay.
I don't really mark up the test. Maybe a little bit. It depends on the company. Because my time is what I charge out for. That's what costs the money. So realistically, and I can do it relatively fast by still building enough time. You're looking at, $300 to $400 on top of that. So my base, and it's on the web, you can see it. My base optimized test is my time, and your DNA test comes in at $749.
Okay. So that's actually a great, so one of the other things for Monday is,
so I have a bundle testing. So we're actually looking at, because what we're seeing with clinically relevant testing, there's no client that walks out of my door or off my Zoom screen without needing some form of testing. And there's a way we can bundle that now. And that's what I'm going to do. Because otherwise you're nickeling and diming people.
Right. But I think that's a good.
Like consulting, usually it's you'll do the DNA testing, but usually, you're looking a good $250 for me to that consulting, because you have an actionable report.
Well, and when Amanda and I get off the phone, we're going to talk about, get off the Skype here, we're going to talk about her increasing her prices. However, I would like on that part, what I would like to I think the reason I brought that up is, as you're thinking about this, that's a really important point, which is let's just call it $800. And that's absent your time as a dietitian. So now let's call it $1,000.
Totally, you've got to build on.
Yeah, and if you want to offer $1,000, or if you want to offer that Cadillac program, that $5,000 that like all the, there are a bunch of different coaches that are helping people like, hey, if I want to have 2 or 3 $5,000 clients a month, if you want to offer that and somebody can look at what they can get, right? They're going to get that roadmap. They're going to get Amanda or a colleague's interpretation. We're going to look at that. Then you're going to be doing everything else that you would be doing and your whole piece. Then you would put together that bundle. And I think the reason that's so important is if you have somebody who, or if you're struggling to figure out how to communicate with an audience that, not how to communicate, if your audience is more in the, hey, how do I charge $150 or $300? Then this probably isn't that initial investment space. It doesn't mean that you personally, in your profession, can't make that leap over to this other area. And I would highly recommend it when you look at the dollar value associated with it. But I think that makes a ton of sense. Okay.
Yeah, and the price I gave there is the absolute basic that we do. So obviously we have much higher level packages where we're building in a lot more clinical time. So yeah.
Right. So I am guessing that out of this, there are a lot of questions that have not been answered. The ones that have not been answered for me are really, how does this all work? And I think one of the things, this has come up now 2 or 3 times. So I am going to bring Amanda back in January. And what we are actually going to do is go through a roadmap there, because I think that what we want to see here is what we can be doing as clinicians to understand, how you get this data, here's what this is, here's what she can see from that part, and how you move forward. I think that would be super valuable. So if your questions are in that neighborhood, just make sure that you either stay in her group or following the Better Nutrition Program, or ideally doing both of those, so that we can, you'll get the information about when that's going to be in January. I think there's an additional piece of information that may be on your minds, and that might be how could you work with some of your patients and work with Amanda on that piece. Please reach out to her directly. Head to the Genomic Kitchen. There's a lot of different information there. As she said, she's got a lot of different programs, on that piece. And then I think where I get particularly interested in all of this coming together is how do we take somebody from that genomic assessment to understanding what they have going on, to where is your current nutrition today and where does it need to be for us to get those health benefits. And that's really where we're looking at the collaboration of using the Better Nutrition Program assessment tools in conjunction with this genomic assessment piece. Mm-hmm. And that's something that, we will both bring forward to you, and also is something that I'm very comfortable connecting with you to talk about. So if that's of interest, please connect with me, either Ashley at the Better Nutrition Program, or drop me a note here and we can connect on that part. So much more to be continued. But the most important thing to take away today is you are better than about 90%, just as you are today with no genomic testing information. If you're like me, you are better than 90% of the tests that are being sold to consumer, and especially than 100% of the ones that are selling a supplement. So really important, and you can use this, you can use part of this, or you can use this whole presentation to share with your patients or with colleagues to make sure that your organization or who you're connecting with does not go that route, because those are doing a disservice to your patients, and they're actually doing a disservice to you as a practitioner. So I think on that part, for me, that rounds it out. Amanda, what are your final thoughts?
I just have one thought. You said that, with Kim's question, where can you send a patient to have their DNA tested? And one thing, just as you were rounding up there, made me think of a company that's out of Seattle. Are they called Arivale?
They closed. They're gone. They closed.
Oh, they're gone? Good. Well, that's the end of that then.
There you go. Yeah.
Was that, they had clinicians on staff, and it was like a membership program. Okay, then I don't know, which makes us
and they closed some of our dear friends, Ginger and Mary Purdy. Shout out to you. You've done amazing work on that part. But they closed because the price point, they weren't outrageous, but they were priced the way we were just talking about. Like, it's going to be this for the test, and then it's this for the assessment, and then it's this. And,
Yeah.
you know, that compared to what, you know, some of these other companies are doing and selling a supplement or selling a program and it's at the, you know, $1.99, they couldn't compete. But what you would have gotten there was what you needed, and what you aren't getting here, save that $1.99 and go, you know, buy yourself a gym membership or do something on that piece. Yeah. Whatever else on that part.
Well, thanks. And hey.
Yes. Yes. It's why we all need to find the backing and the people that that create the business around Amanda and training and having more people like you doing what you're doing, you know, is what we need to see. So really excited to check out 3x4. Just going through it again, the company Bioceuticals, if somebody is interested.
Fantastic.
Yeah, some of their stuff is fantastic. And I just want to make a final plug. There are very few newsletters that I allow myself to subscribe to, or that I don't just automatically delete. I learn something new from your newsletter every time it comes out. So I just want to say thank you. Great resources there. That's even a way to dip your toe in at least some of the conversation, because she always is finding some you know, research studies and things. And in this group here, if you're in the Genomic Kitchen group or Culinary Genomics group, you know, just even the conversations we've been having about leptins and about caffeine, really helping make sure that none of us comes up with one right answer and really, you know, maintains the creativity and the problem-solving mindset that got, you know, us into what we're doing. So I really appreciate you for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, everyone. That is it. Literally, it is 3:00 on the dot. I'm clicking finish. We are done. Thank you so much for joining today. And this will be posted. I will also have a YouTube link. So if you would like the link, just hit me up over here for it and we'll get that to you as well. So thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.